In this week's edition of the Mesonet Weather Report, let's take a look at the progress of this year's wheat crop. I want to focus on temperature impacts, and later Gary will discuss the bigger issue, which is the limited amounts of moisture available. The warmer than normal winter to date should have the wheat crop further along in development. One way to illustrate this would be to look at the wheat degree days chart. Degree days accumulate whenever the temperature is above 40 degrees. This year, we are about 1,300 degree days, or about 30% above the 5-year average. A more important method to look at development would be to look at progress towards first hollow stem. A tool available on the Mesonet website looks at soil heat units and estimates when wheat varieties will potentially reach the first hollow stem stage. This is extremely important for when to remove cattle from dual-purpose wheat fields. Specific varieties are broken into early, middle, or late categories. Here is the early map through early this week. We recommend hands-on scouting when it reaches 5% and likely need to pull cattle at 50% or the red color. The tool can project up to 2 weeks as well. Here is that early variety 2-week map showing lots of red. Chances are this is highly overestimating because water has dramatically limited wheat growth this year.
Thanks, Wes, and good morning, everyone. Well, unfortunately, we have another week of drought intensification across the state. Let's get right to the new drought monitor map and see where we're at. Unfortunately, we have a few more of those bad colors on the map, just a little bit more red, a little bit more brown, a little bit more of that dark red too out there in the western panhandle, where we now have that exceptional drought going from about the center of Texas County all the way into New Mexico. So an intensification out in that part of the state. Still, basically the western half of the state covered with extreme drought. We do have severe drought over much of the rest of the state. Only far east central Oklahoma remains out of any type of dry conditions at this time. They've had a few more rainfall events. That shows up in the Mesonet maps from the start of the climatological winter back on December 1st, 2021. We can see that east central part of the state got 4 to 5 inches back in those last 2 months, so a little bit better out there. But when you get to I-35 and to the west, basically an inch or less of rain, and for much of that, it's less than 1/4 inch. In fact, much of it is around 1/10 of an inch, so definitely not good news. A dry part of the year, or much drier than what it normally is. That shows up quite well on the percent of normal rainfall totals over that time frame. Again, much of the western half of the state, less than 25% of normal. In fact, a lot of it is less than 10% of normal. And then, of course, much of the rest of the state is below normal, at least to some degree. That warm weather in December sure didn't help our chances to get out of drought. In fact, it exacerbated the drought quite dramatically. When we look at the outlooks for February through April from the Climate Prediction Center, we see increased odds of above normal temperatures across the entire state of Oklahoma, but especially across the southern half of the state and also the entire panhandle. So that's not good news for drought conditions, at least. Precipitation, we see increased odds of below normal precipitation for those 3 months, but especially across far western Oklahoma and the panhandle, unfortunately where the drought is at its worst. For eastern Oklahoma, they see equal odds of above normal, near normal, or below normal precipitation, so not quite as bad for that part of the state. But if temperatures are above normal, that's almost as bad as if you're just a little bit below normal in precipitation. When you combine the two, that's when we get really bad drought conditions start to intensify and spread more rapidly. That's it for this time. We'll see you next time on the Mesonet Weather Report.